Her lips trembled, but she didn't let the tears fall, not in front of the man who once promised her forever, and then tossed her aside like a forgotten dream. Jasmine stood tall, stethoscope around her neck, heart racing. She wasn't here for him. She was here for his daughter, the same daughter he never told her about. Have you ever loved someone so completely, only to become a stranger in the very life you helped build? Jasmine once kissed Jermaine like he was the air she breathed. He kissed her back like she was his addiction. But love, real love, shouldn't hurt like that. One phone call, and it was over. No explanations, no second chances, just a shattered ring and an empty promise. Years passed. She became a woman he'd never recognize, strong, driven, heart still healing, until fate dragged her right back to him. Now his child needs saving, and the only person who can help is the woman he broke. But can you ever forgive the man who crushed your soul? Can you still feel something when your hand brushes his by mistake, when his eyes plead for a second chance? Or do you let him suffer the same silence he once left you with? Welcome to a story that isn't just about heartbreak. It's about rising stronger, choosing courage over bitterness, and maybe, just maybe, falling in love again. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Mr. Leonardo Stories, and leave a comment. Would you ever take back someone who left you shattered? A ring that once sparkled like her dreams now lay on the kitchen counter, cold and abandoned. Jasmine stood in the soft glow of their apartment, barefoot, wearing the satin robe he once said made her look like his forever. She could still feel the warmth of his lips from just a week ago, whispering promises on her skin. But tonight, his voice was cold, detached, not the man she once melted into. Jermaine wouldn't meet her eyes. "It's over," he said, pouring a drink with the same hand that had once held hers through thunder and fire. She blinked, confusion clouding her breath. "What do you mean, it's over?" He finally looked at her, not with love, not even with anger, just indifference. "My mother's right," he murmured. "You don't fit into the life I'm building. You're too emotional, too soft. I need someone who understands this world." His words sliced deeper than any blade. And yet, she didn't cry. Not yet. Because before this, before the rejection, before the silence that followed the goodbye, there had been them. Two souls who fell fast, wild, and deep. Late-night drives with hands tangled in each other's hair. Passionate kisses stolen between business meetings. Whispers of forever spoken into jasmine-scented pillows. He used to call her his peace in a world on fire. So why now did he act like she was the chaos? Jasmine knew Jermaine's mother never approved. She'd called her too average, too emotional, and too attached. Jermaine had always defended her. Until he didn't. The pressure became silent, but constant, and Jasmine, so full of love, had started shrinking herself just to fit. She dimmed her shine. She bit her tongue. She waited patiently for him to choose her fully. But when he finally made a choice, it wasn't her. "I think you should leave," Jermaine said, barely lifting his eyes from the drink in his hand. Jasmine stood frozen. No scream, no begging. Just one hand resting on the counter where her ring sat like a cruel joke. "Keep it," he muttered. She left it behind. Her heels echoed through the empty hallway, and as the door closed behind her, her knees gave out. But no one saw her fall. Because even in heartbreak, Jasmine had always known how to break beautifully. Betty, her best friend and roommate, opened the door before Jasmine even knocked. No words, just open arms. Jasmine's mascara had already bled down her cheeks, her breath shaky, her heart too loud. "He ended it?" Betty whispered. A soft nod. "Why?" "Because I loved him more than he deserved," Jasmine whispered, broken. Jermaine didn't break up with Jasmine because he stopped loving her. He broke up with her because he loved her. And it scared him. His pride, his image, his ambition, none of them made space for softness, for honesty, for surrender. And Jasmine, in all her vulnerability, demanded real love. But real love requires real courage. And Jermaine? He just wasn't ready. The silence in Betty's apartment was thick, the kind of silence that holds broken things together before they shatter. Jasmine sat curled on the edge of the bed, wearing an oversized hoodie and no makeup. Stripped of glamour, stripped of promises. She stared at her phone screen, his name still saved as My Always. She didn't delete it. Not yet. You gave him your everything, Betty said gently, sliding beside her on the bed. But maybe now, it's time to give everything to yourself. Betty was warmth without judgment, sass without cruelty. She'd known Jasmine since med school, the girl who would skip sleep for a patient but forget to eat for herself. She knew the depth of Jasmine's heart, and the danger of loving someone who didn't know how to hold it. Nights were the hardest, because the body remembers what the heart is trying to forget. The scent of his cologne when she inhaled her pillow, the memory of his fingers tracing circles on her thigh, the way he used to hold her like she was made of crystal and fire. It wasn't just the breakup that hurt, it was the intimacy that haunted her. The vulnerability she once offered, bare, soft, sacred, was now tucked away under layers of thick skin and quiet sobs. But still, she missed him. Jasmine returned to the hospital 2 weeks later, hair slicked back into a neat bun, white coat crisp, heart guarded. She poured herself into her patients, especially the children, their honesty, their innocence, their belief that healing was always possible. It reminded her who she was. One night, after a grueling shift, she stood alone in the break room. The vending machine hummed, fluorescent lights humming above. She whispered to no one, "You might have broken me, Jermaine, but you didn't destroy me." Years ago, Jasmine sat on the floor of her dorm room, diagrams spread out like a war map. She'd failed her first anatomy test. Her dreams felt far, but she didn't quit. She stayed up. She cried. She studied until her eyes burned. That same fire still lived inside her. One rainy night, Jasmine soaked in a warm tub, candles flickering. The steam kissed her skin, the water covering her like a hug. She touched her collarbone slowly, remembering how Jermaine used to kiss it, whispering, "You're everything I never knew I needed." She exhaled, "But you never fought to keep me." A single tear slid down her cheek, disappearing beneath the water. It would be the last one she cried for him. Betty made it her mission to rebuild Jasmine's belief in love and herself. She planned girls' nights, left sticky notes with quotes on the bathroom mirror, and said things like, "You don't need to be anyone's forever to know you're enough. The right one won't let you wonder. Healing isn't pretty, but neither is staying broken." Bit by bit, Jasmine started to believe it. 6 months later, Jasmine applied for a pediatric residency fellowship. Prestigious, competitive, but perfect. She nailed the interview. She smiled more. She started dancing in the kitchen again. And when a stranger complimented her at the grocery store, she didn't flinch. She smiled back. Jasmine didn't get stronger by pretending she wasn't hurt. She got stronger by choosing to love herself anyway. Pain doesn't erase your value. Abandonment doesn't make you unlovable. And the loss of one future doesn't mean you're not worthy of a new beginning. The skyline of the city glittered from Jermaine's penthouse, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a sea of success. He had it all. Luxury cars are parked in his private garage. A closet filled with Italian suits and tailored silence. A whiskey bar worth more than most people's homes. And a name that echoed through boardrooms like gospel. But no matter how many deals he closed or awards he accepted, the nights were always cold. Because the one thing he could never buy back was her. His mornings were structured with robotic precision. 5 a.m. gym, 6:30 a.m. protein smoothie, 7:30 a.m. chauffeur to the office, and them. Ruthless negotiations, smiles that never reached his eyes. The world applauded him. Jermaine Carter, visionary entrepreneur, the man who built an empire before 35, a king of commerce. But Jermaine didn't feel like a king. He felt like a man who once held gold and dropped it for dust. Most nights, Jermaine would return home late, loosen his tie, pour himself a drink, and walk straight to the one place he always avoided during the day, the storage room. Inside, untouched for 3 years, was a single velvet box, a wedding ring, the one he never got the chance to give her. He'd picked it out himself, white gold, soft rose-cut diamond, engraved with yours, always, but in the end, it was his pride that spoke louder than his heart. And Jasmine? She left, without asking for closure. She gave him dignity, even as he tore hers apart. Even at black-tie galas and high-end charity dinners, Jermaine's eyes wandered, searching, looking for a familiar silhouette, a certain scent, a quiet smile. But she was never there. He dated other women, models, entrepreneurs, heiresses. They looked good on paper. They posed well beside him. But none of them ever touched his soul the way Jasmine did. They didn't laugh from their belly. They didn't cry during documentaries. They didn't bring him takeout at 2 a.m. in hospital scrubs, smelling like lavender and determination. They were polished. Jasmine was real. One evening, Jermaine met Levi at their usual rooftop cigar bar. Levi was both a rival and a longtime friend, the only person who dared challenge him. "You've got everything a man could want," Levi said, sipping his scotch. "Yet you always look like you're missing the only thing that mattered." Jermaine smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I made the right call." Levi raised a brow. "Did you? Or did your ego make it for you?" The silence between them said more than Jermaine ever could. One night, Jermaine's assistant forwarded him an old digital folder she found while organizing files. "Possible deletion," she wrote. He opened it. Inside were photos from 3 years ago, a Paris trip. Jasmine's smile in soft sunlight, her fingers tangled in his. A video of her dancing in their hotel suite, barefoot and wild. He watched it 10 times that night, and for the first time in years, he cried. Jermaine was a father most people didn't know. He kept his daughter's life protected, hidden from tabloids and business vultures. Her name was Ally, 7 years old. Bright, curious, with her mother's warmth and his stubborn chin. Her mother, a woman from a brief rebound relationship, had died in childbirth. Jermaine took full custody. But he struggled. He loved Ally with a depth he'd never known before, but he didn't know how to show it. She would crawl into his lap while he typed on his laptop. She'd draw hearts on his business notes. She didn't want another doll. She wanted him. But Jermaine was a man haunted by his own choices. One night, after Ally fell asleep with her head in his lap, Jermaine stared into the fireplace and whispered, "I had a woman who could have taught me how to love her, and I let her go." Jermaine had built empires, signed billion-dollar contracts, bought skyscrapers and luxury jets, but in the quiet of his soul there was still one contract left unsigned, the promise of forever he failed to keep. Because success that doesn't include someone to share it with is just noise in an empty room. It began with a cough. Jermaine brushed it off as a common cold, but soon the fever rose, relentless. Ally's breathing grew shallow, her little hands clammy. Jermaine, the man who never flinched in front of investors, felt his chest tighten in helpless panic as he carried her through the hospital doors. His million-dollar world meant nothing in this moment. "Please," he begged the receptionist, voice trembling. "I need the best doctor you have for my daughter." And fate, cruel, poetic, merciful fate, delivered her. Jasmine stepped into the room, white coat flowing, stethoscope gleaming. Time stilled. Her eyes landed on Ally first, gentle, focused, professional. But when her gaze lifted, locking onto Jermaine, it was as if years melted away, replaced by a storm neither of them was ready for. Jermaine's chest tightened. She was more beautiful now, stronger, fiercer, glowing with purpose. Not the woman he left, but the woman who survived without him. "Dr. Jasmine Collins," she introduced, her voice calm but sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk. "I'll be taking care of your daughter." Jermaine's lips parted, his pride crumbling under the weight of the moment. "Jasmine." Her expression never wavered. "Please step aside, Mr. Carter. Your daughter needs me." Not your apologies. As Jasmine checked Ally's heartbeat, adjusted her IV, and whispered gentle words, Jermaine watched in silence. Memories collided. Her laughter echoed in his old apartment. Her body pressed against his in the dark. The ring he'd left abandoned on the counter. Now, here she was, hands steady, heart guarded, tending to the only person he loved more than himself. And he realized something terrifying. He had never stopped loving her. Every glance was electric. Every brush of her hand near his sent shivers of a past they thought buried. Ali coughed softly. Jasmine stroked her forehead, her touch tender. Germaine wanted to say thank you, but what spilled out instead was the truth locked inside his chest for years. "You look incredible." Jasmine froze. Her eyes snapped to his. Cold, unforgiving. "This is a hospital, Germaine, not a place for your sweet lies." Later that night, as Ali slept peacefully, Germaine lingered at the doorway of the hospital room. Jasmine was writing notes, her face illuminated by the soft glow of a lamp. For a moment, she let her guard down. Her fingers brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, her lips slightly parted in focus. Germaine stepped forward, unable to stop himself. Their eyes met. The silence between them burned. He reached out, almost without thought, his hand brushing the back of hers. Jasmine's breath hitched. The connection was electric. Familiar, dangerous. She pulled away quickly, tucking her hand behind her back. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't you dare try to touch me like nothing ever happened. Fate is cruel, but it is also precise. It doesn't wait for our readiness, doesn't care about our scars. It simply forces us to face the people, choices, and wounds we've tried to bury." For Germaine and Jasmine, fate had spoken. The past was no longer past. It was here, breathing between them, in every unspoken word and stolen glance. As Jasmine tucked Ali in, Germaine whispered under his breath, more to himself than to her. "I lost you once. I won't survive losing you again." Jasmine turned, eyes glistening, not with softness, but with steel. "You don't get to decide that anymore." The hospital corridors smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee, the kind of mix that clung to sleepless nights. Jasmine walked briskly, her white coat swaying, files tucked under her arm. She had done this walk 100 times, efficient, precise, professional, but tonight felt different. Because Germaine was here. He had been here every day since Ali was admitted, pacing the halls. Like a man who owned the world, but was powerless inside its walls. His presence unsettled her, not because she was afraid, but because her heart still reacted to him in ways she hated. Her chest tightened when she saw him. Her breath faltered when his eyes found hers. And it burned, because she didn't want to feel that anymore. Not after what he did. Germaine leaned against the wall outside Ali's room, his suit jacket tossed carelessly over a chair. His tie was loosened, his shirt rolled at the sleeves, an image of casual wealth and untamed tension. But his eyes weren't on his phone or the file in his hands. They were locked on Jasmine as she approached. For a moment, he didn't breathe. She looked like a vision he wasn't meant to see again. Focused, beautiful, untouchable. Her hair was pulled into a bun, stray tendrils brushing against her cheek. No jewelry, no makeup, no perfume. Yet she radiated more elegance than any of the women he'd surrounded himself with in her absence. Jasmine stopped by the door, acknowledging him only with a curt nod. "How's Ali?" Germaine asked, his voice low, unsure if it deserved to reach her. Jasmine didn't look at him. She flipped open the chart in her hand, scanning the notes. "She's responding well to treatment. The fever has stabilized. She'll need monitoring overnight." Her tone was crisp, clinical, the same tone she would use with any patient's family member. And that cut him deeper than any insult could have, because once her voice had only been soft for him. The silence between them pressed heavily. Germaine tried to break it. "You've changed," he said, almost under his breath. Jasmine's eyes flickered up briefly, sharp and cold. "You haven't." That stung. He wanted to argue, to tell her he wasn't the same man who let her walk away. But what right did he have? He had forfeited the privilege of her gentleness years ago. Jasmine turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Jasmine." "Wait." She froze, her back to him, spine rigid. Slowly, she turned. Her eyes were glassy, but her expression was firm. "Don't do this here," she whispered. "Not while your daughter needs me more than you do." It was nearly midnight when Jasmine sat at her desk in the empty nurse's station, exhaustion weighing down her shoulders. She rubbed her temples, trying to focus on the chart in front of her. The words blurred. She hadn't eaten in hours, hadn't closed her eyes in longer. Her pen slipped from her fingers. Her head dipped forward. Just for a second, she thought she might rest. Just a second. That's when Jermaine appeared. He had been walking past, restless as always, unable to sit still while his daughter slept. When he saw Jasmine slumped over her desk, something inside him cracked. She looked fragile, vulnerable, yet still stronger than anyone he knew. Quietly, he stepped into the room. His footsteps softened, as if even the floor knew to respect her. He reached down, picked up her fallen pen, and set it gently aside. Then, with trembling hesitation, he slid the file from beneath her arm, placing it carefully on the desk so she wouldn't wake. Her hand twitched as the weight shifted. For a moment, her fingers brushed against his. The contact was barely there, skin on skin, a ghost of a touch. But it sent lightning through both of them. Jasmine stirred, her lashes fluttering open. Her eyes met his, bleary and soft with fatigue. For a moment, she forgot to be guarded. For a moment, she just looked at him the way she used to, like he was the only person in the world. Jermaine's breath caught. His voice dropped to a whisper. "You should rest." Her chest rose sharply, her lips parting as if to respond. But then she blinked, remembering, pulling herself back into armor. She straightened in her chair, tugging her coat tighter around her. "Don't," she said firmly. Her voice wavered, but she forced strength into it. "Don't look at me like you still have the right." Jermaine stepped back, swallowing the ache in his throat. He wanted to say 1,000 things. That he regretted everything. That he'd trade every dollar he ever made to undo that night. That she was still the only woman he had ever truly loved. But instead, he said nothing. He simply watched her gather her files, watched her walk away with the same dignity she carried years ago when she left him, and when the door closed behind her, the silence was unbearable. Jasmine leaned against the bathroom mirror, gripping the sink until her knuckles whitened. Her reflection stared back at her, tired eyes, flushed cheeks, lips trembling. That touch, that gaze, it shouldn't have shaken her, but it did. She whispered to herself, almost angrily, "No, don't you dare fall again, not for him." But her heart didn't listen, because despite all the pain, despite all the betrayal, the memory of his love still lingered in her body like muscle memory. And the more she tried to fight it, the louder it became. That night, Jasmine avoided him. She buried herself in her patience, in charts, in anything that kept her from thinking about the way his fingers had brushed hers. Jermaine, on the other hand, sat by Ali's bedside, watching his daughter breathe, but hearing only Jasmine's voice in his head. They were two people on opposite ends of the same wound, drawn together by history, pushed apart by pride. And the tension was only beginning to burn. The morning sun slipped through the blinds of Ali's hospital room, casting golden stripes across the pale walls. Machines beeped steadily, a reminder of fragility, but the child's laughter, soft, delicate, unbothered, filled the room with something no machine could measure. Ali was sketching on a piece of paper with crayons Jermaine had bought from the hospital gift shop. Her little fingers moved in quick strokes, her tongue sticking out as she concentrated. Jermaine sat at the edge of her bed, his tie absent, shirt wrinkled from sleeping in the chair. His eyes were heavy, but every glance at his daughter kept him awake. When Jasmine entered, her presence shifted the air. She wore her white coat as always, but her aura was gentler this morning. Jermaine noticed immediately. His breath caught. He always noticed. Ali looked up, her face breaking into a smile. "Pretty doctor," she squealed, waving the crayon. "You came back." Jasmine's lips curved despite herself. She moved closer, pulling up a stool beside the bed. "Of course I came back. Did you think I'd leave before you got better?" Ali shook her head, her dark curls bouncing. "Daddy says You make people strong again. Can you make him strong too? The room froze. Germaine's chest tightened. Jasmine's hand paused mid-reach. The innocence in Ali's words cracked something both of them had tried so hard to fortify. Jasmine finally smiled softly, brushing Ali's forehead. Your daddy's already strong. He just forgets sometimes. Germaine exhaled, closing his eyes briefly. Those words were meant for Ali, but they cut right through him. Ali proudly held up the paper she'd been coloring. The drawing was messy, full of bright colors and crooked lines. 3 figures stood together, hand in hand. A tall man in a suit, a woman with long hair, a little girl between them. Germaine's throat closed. Jasmine's fingers trembled. See? Ali grinned. It's me, Daddy, and you, Dr. Jasmine. We're a family. Germaine glanced at Jasmine. She looked shaken, her eyes darting away quickly. He wanted to reach for her hand, to tell her that Ali's picture wasn't a fantasy. It was the life he still dreamed of. But Jasmine's expression warned him, not here, not yet. That's beautiful, sweetheart, Germaine managed, his voice hoarse. You're quite the artist. Jasmine leaned down, brushing Ali's cheek with a kiss. Her heart ached in ways she hadn't allowed in years. She wasn't supposed to feel this, not after everything. But Ali's innocence made it impossible to stay numb. Throughout the day, Jasmine stayed close. She checked Ali's vitals, adjusted her IV, and told her little stories about brave children who beat illnesses like warriors. Ali listened with wide eyes, completely enthralled. Germaine watched quietly, his gaze never leaving Jasmine. The way she tucked Ali's blanket, the way her voice softened when she promised, "You'll be okay." The way her hands, those same hands that once traced his jaw, moved with delicate precision. At one point, Ali yawned and reached out with both arms. "Will you stay here, Dr. Jasmine? Just until I sleep?" Jasmine hesitated. Then, slowly, she sat on the edge of the bed, letting the little girl curl into her lap. Ali's tiny fingers clutched her coat, her breathing evening out as she drifted into dreams. Germaine's heart twisted at the sight. Jasmine looked down at his daughter with a tenderness that was second nature. For a fleeting second, it was like looking at the family he had destroyed and might never rebuild. When Ali finally slept, Germaine leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. "She likes you, more than she's liked anyone since..." He trailed off. Since her mother, since the life he never wanted, but was forced to take on alone. Jasmine's eyes lifted to meet his. Something flickered there, compassion maybe, or a memory. "She's a beautiful child," Jasmine said softly. "She deserves the world." "I want to give it to her," Germaine whispered back, "but I don't know if I can, not alone." The vulnerability in his tone caught her off guard. She looked at him for longer than she meant to, her heart betraying her with every second. She remembered this side of him, the man who once whispered his fears into her neck at 2 a.m., the man who once promised he'd protect her forever. And though she wanted to stay cold, she couldn't deny it, the man she loved was still there, beneath the armor of pride. Later that evening, Jasmine returned with medication. Ali stirred, half asleep, reaching out blindly. "Don't go, pretty doctor." Jasmine hushed her gently. "I'm not going anywhere." Germaine watched the exchange. Something shifted inside him, an ache, sharp and deep. For years he had drowned himself in wealth, telling himself he was fine without love. But watching Jasmine with Ali shattered that lie. She wasn't just healing his daughter. She was healing a part of him that he thought was beyond saving. When Jasmine stood to leave, Germaine followed her into the hallway. "Thank you," he said quietly. She stopped, her back to him. Her shoulders stiffened, as if gratitude was the last thing she wanted from him. Slowly, she turned. Her eyes were guarded, but her voice was steady. "I'm not doing this for you, Germaine. I'm doing this for her. I know." He swallowed hard. "But watching you with her, I couldn't stop thinking about what we could have had." Jasmine's lips parted, trembling. She wanted to scream at him, to remind him he was the one who threw it all away. But deep inside, a part of her, the part she hated, still longed for what might have been. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Don't confuse gratitude with love. I'm here as her doctor. Nothing more. But her eyes betrayed her words. They lingered on him longer than they should have, sparking with memories neither of them could erase. Back inside, Ali stirred in her sleep, mumbling softly. Family. The word lingered in the air like a spell, binding the three of them together even as they fought against it. Jermaine stood frozen, his heart pounding. Jasmine walked away quickly, her heels clicking against the sterile floor. But no matter how fast she walked, she couldn't outpace the truth. The fire between them wasn't gone. It had only been buried, waiting for the right spark. And Ali, without even knowing, had lit the match. The garden behind the pediatric wing was small, 2 benches, a low hedge, of white roses, and a single lamppost humming softly in the late hour. Night air moved like a cool hand over frayed nerves. Somewhere inside, machines kept a steady rhythm for sleeping children, but out here, it was just breath and courage. Jasmine found the bench first. She didn't sit. She wanted to. But sitting felt like surrender, and she was still holding the line. She stood with her hands in the pockets of her white coat, eyes lifted to the wavering light. Footsteps approached. She knew that stride without looking. "Jasmine," Jermaine said, stopping a few feet away. The words were a rough scrape in his throat. "Can we talk?" "You're talking," she said, gaze fixed on the lamplight. "Make it count." He swallowed. The man who never stuttered before a board was searching for language like a child. "I owe you an apology." Her head tilted, no softness in her posture. "No, you owe me the truth." He looked down at his hands, the same hands that closed on pens and signatures and deals that stretched whole skylines. Those hands couldn't hold her when it mattered. "I ended it because I let the wrong voices fill my head," he said at last. "I let my mother decide what love should look like, and I told myself I needed someone who fit a plan. Someone polished, controllable, convenient." Jasmine laughed once. Quiet, without any joy. Convenient. Was that ever our problem? We were too much, too fiery, too honest, too us. She finally cut her gaze to him, and he felt it like heat. "You didn't want easy, Jermaine. You wanted approval." His jaw tensed. "I wanted a future that wouldn't fall apart. You broke it yourself," she said. "You broke me." Silence hovered. The hedge bent with a small breeze. The lamp flickered as though it breathed too. "I carried the ring to your place," he said, voice low. "I stood in the hallway and heard you humming in the kitchen. You sounded happy, like home. And I panicked. I thought, if I do this, there is no going back. I thought about the dinner tables where I'd have to defend you to people who would never deserve you. I thought about how much you would ask of me. Honesty, presence, a softer version of a man who only knew how to fight. I thought about the nights I wouldn't be able to hide behind work, and I ran while I still had the chance to pretend I was strong." Her lips parted, a small cut of hurt opening again. "So you punished me for the kind of love that would have healed you." "I punished myself," he murmured. "Every day after." "Congratulations," she said, tired. "We both bled." He stepped closer. She didn't move. That alone made him ache. "I never stopped loving you," he said. "I tried to make other lives fit. They didn't. Nothing did. When Ali was born," her eyebrows flicked. "Her mother." His throat tightened. "We weren't in love. It was quick, careless. She died giving birth." He fought for breath. "I thought I could learn how to be enough for a child without being enough for myself. I'm still learning." He swallowed the edge of shame. "Ali made me brave enough to come back to who I was with you. Seeing you with her, I realized how much I want the life or threw away." Jasmine's chest rose, fell. "Don't do that," she said softly. "Don't use your daughter's illness as a doorway to my heart." His eyes lifted, stung. "I would never." "You would," she said, but her voice gentled. "Not intentionally. You're desperate. I can feel it." She drew a breath that shook. "I'm desperate too. For peace. For a love that doesn't make me beg for the basics." He took another step. The space between them shrank until there was just the breath of a hand. Tell me what you need. I needed you to choose me, she said, each word precise. I needed you to look at me when the world called me average and say, that's my miracle. I needed you to fight for the woman who would have surrendered everything to stand beside you. I needed you to love me in public, not just in the dark. The lamplight tracked the wetness in her eyes. She didn't brush it away. I left the ring on the counter because it belonged to a version of us that died, she said. But I kept the key to who I was before you. Fierce, soft, stubborn, faithful. I had to. I needed that girl to become this woman. He reached up, slow enough to be refused, fingers hovering near her cheek. Can I? She stepped back half a pace. Not far. Just enough. No. His hand fell. The refusal was mercy, not a wall. He felt the difference. Betty told me once I loved you bigger than my future, she said, swallowing. I told her it wasn't true. But it was. I would have moved cities, left programs, changed the rhythm of my days to fit you into them. I would have put your last name on my white coat with pride. The night you ended it, I realized my future has to fit me first. Her voice steadied. So understand this, Jermaine. If there's ever a second chance, it won't be because you're lonely. It won't be because your mother softened or your rivals respect you. It will be because you've grown. Because love is no longer a performance you expect me to carry while you count your wins. He breathed in, like a diver breaking the surface. I hear you. Do you? Her gaze sharpened. Then say it back to me so I know I'm not speaking into an apology shaped like a habit. He nodded, jaw tight with feeling. If there's a second chance, it's not because I miss what you did for me. It's because I am different. Because I will meet you where you stand, not drag you where I'm comfortable. I won't let pride choose for me. I won't ask you to shrink. I won't hide you. I won't hold work like a shield. The lamplight drew a quiet circle around them. His voice dropped. And I won't touch you like a right I kept in storage. If you let me near, it'll be because I've earned the nearness. Silence again. Not the old choking kind. Something newer. A silence that waited. Jasmine sat at last, easing onto the edge of the bench, white coat framing her like a flag of truce. She pat the space beside her, once. Not an invitation to intimacy, an invitation to honesty. He sat, careful to keep inches between them. The night held them both. Tell me something true you've never said out loud, she said. He stared ahead. I count time in befores and afters, he said. Before you, I thought love was an award. Proof I'd done life correctly. After you, I knew love was a practice. Proof I was willing to be soft where it mattered. I failed the practice and called it a strategy. Her breath hitched, surprised by the clarity. Your turn to ask. He nodded. Something true you've never said out loud. She looked at her hands. Sometimes I still set an extra plate in my head, she said quietly. Not for you, the you who left, but for the man I loved. The version of you who asked me how many hours I'd slept and brought me ginger tea when my stomach tied itself in knots. The man who pressed his forehead to mine when I was scared of failing and said, if you fail, we fail together. I hated him when you taught me he wasn't real. I grieved him when I learned he was. He just lost the courage to stay. His eyes closed. He breathed like a wound, learning not to bleed. I can be that man. You were that man, she said, once. I don't need a performance. I need a life. They sat with that. The roses shifted. A petal loosened itself and fell without sound. Why didn't you call? He asked, voice rough. Why didn't you demand an explanation? Scream? Throw something? I deserved it. Her mouth twitched. Because I knew my voice wouldn't sway a heart already convinced. Because I loved you enough to leave you with your choice. Because I promised myself my dignity would not be the payment for a love I didn't break. A long pause. He turned to her, eyes wet. Thank you, he said, for leaving me with who I chose. It taught me I hated the man I picked over you. Jasmine exhaled, a tiny tremor at the end of it. Jermaine. He looked up. Her voice softened. Ali needs you present, not perfect, not performing, present. The way you showed up today when she asked for water, The way you learned how to braid her hair from YouTube and still messed it up, but tried again. The way you told her the truth. You didn't promise she'd never be sick again. You promised she'd never be alone. His face broke. I want to be that for you. You'll have to be it for yourself first, she said. And keep being it when I'm not standing here reminding you how. He nodded, slow and sure. The inches between them felt smaller, not because their bodies moved, but because their words did. Her phone buzzed, a nurse checking vitals. She stood, smoothing her coat, the night gripping her hair with gentle fingers. He rose too, but didn't crowd her. She looked at him for a long second. His eyes were rimmed with the kind of honesty that doesn't demand applause. Tomorrow, she said, bring Ali that storybook she likes, the one with the girl who goes to the moon. The blue cover, he said. She pretends the craters are cookie bites. A corner of Jasmine's mouth lifted. Good. Read it to her. Slowly. She listens for the parts where the dad does the voices. He almost smiled. I'll learn them. Learn her, Jasmine said. The voices follow. She turned to go, then paused and looked back. A question floated in the stillness between them. Would you have fought for me? She asked. If I'd fought you that night. His answer arrived without effort. I would have followed you anywhere if you'd dragged me. But love isn't a hostage situation. He shook his head. You were right to walk. Something in her eased, an old self-blame stepping back from the doorway of her heart. Good night, Jermaine. He nodded, voice a thread. Good night, Jasmine. She took 2 steps, then 3. He didn't chase her. He let the night hold the progress they'd shaped with trembling hands. At the door, she stopped again, one last mercy, and without turning around she spoke. Don't make grand gestures, she said. Make quiet choices, the kind that still stand when no one claps. The door clicked behind her, leaving him with roses and a lamppost and a heart. That felt less like an empty room and more like a space being prepared. He sat back on the bench, pulled out his phone, typed a note and saved it, and call Mom tomorrow. Not to ask permission, to set a boundary. Cancel the investor dinner, I don't need it. Read the moon book twice. Learn the page with the craters. Bring ginger tea. She still likes it with honey. Apologize again, but with actions. He leaned his head back and watched the sky, refusing to be anything but honest. Far off, a siren murmured. Closer, a nurse laughed. Life is carrying on. Life is waiting for a man willing to live it, not perform it. He stood at last and headed for the pediatric wing, feeling the shape of a future he wasn't. Tea forcing this time. One he'd have to earn, one breath, one choice, one quiet yes at a time. If this is pulling at your heart, tap like and subscribe to Mr. Leonardo Stories. In the comments, share this. Is a humble apology enough, or does love require visible change first? The following evening, the hospital buzzed with its usual rhythm of beeps and hurried footsteps. But in Ali's room, quiet lingered. She had finally fallen asleep after another round of medicine, clutching the stuffed rabbit Jasmine had brought her that morning. Jermaine sat at her bedside, stroking her tiny hand. Jasmine adjusted the 4 one last time, her focus sharp. When she moved to leave, Jermaine stood too quickly. Jasmine, he said, his voice carrying more urgency than he intended. We can't keep avoiding this. Her body stilled at the doorway. Slowly, she turned, eyes narrowed. Avoiding what, Jermaine? I'm here for Ali. That's it. That's not it. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so as not to wake Ali. You can pretend all you want, but every time you look at me, I feel it. And I know you do too. Her chest rose sharply. For a heartbeat, she said nothing. Then her words landed like glass shattering. What I feel is anger, and it terrifies me because underneath that anger, I still feel everything else. He flinched. Then don't run from it. Don't you dare, she hissed, stepping closer now, fire in her eyes. Don't you dare ask me to ignore what you did. Do you know how many nights I cried until my body ached? How many mornings I woke up and couldn't breathe because the man I trusted with my soul decided I wasn't enough? You don't get to walk back in and claim the pieces you left behind. His jaw clenched. I was a coward. I admit it. I let my pride dictate my choices. But Jasmine, I've lived every day since regretting it. Every deal, every check, every accolade, it all feels empty without you. Her eyes shimmered, though her voice stayed sharp. You don't get to romanticize your regret. Regret doesn't heal scars. Regret doesn't erase nights of loneliness. Regret doesn't make me trust you again. He stepped closer, only a breath away now. His voice dropped, trembling. Then what does? Tell me what I need to do, and I'll do it. Her lips parted, and for a dangerous second, she almost believed him. Almost. Because his nearness was intoxicating, the heat of his body too familiar. The way his eyes bore into hers, the same eyes that once looked at her like she was the universe, made her knees weaken. Her heart betrayed her. Her hand twitched at her side, aching to reach for him. But she forced herself to stay still. You think love is a transaction, she whispered, broken, like you can buy your way back into my heart. But love isn't earned with promises. It's proven with consistency. And you... Her voice cracked. You already proved you could walk away. Jermaine's throat tightened. His hand lifted slowly, hovering near her cheek, not daring to touch. I'll never walk away again. The space between them burned. Jasmine's breath hitched. His hand lingered inches from her skin, the warmth radiating like a forbidden memory. His gaze flickered to her lips, hungry, desperate. For a moment, everything stilled. The air, the machines, the world outside. It was just them, caught in a storm of longing and pain. Their faces inched closer, so close she could feel his breath against her mouth. So close the past and present blurred into one aching heartbeat. And then... Jasmine stepped back, tears brimming. No, she whispered, her voice breaking. Not like this. Jermaine froze, his chest heaving. The rejection wasn't cruel, it was worse. It was gentle, merciful, final. Jasmine wiped her eyes quickly, turning before he could see the depth of her struggle. She gripped the doorknob, her voice trembling but firm. If you really mean what you say, Jermaine, then stop trying to touch me and start showing me I can trust you again. Until then, stay out of my heart. She left the room, the door closing softly behind her. Jermaine sank into the chair beside Ali's bed, burying his face in his hands. His body shook, not with anger, but with the weight of a love he feared might never be forgiven. In the staff lounge, Jasmine sat in the dark, hugging herself. Her skin still buzzed where his breath had brushed hers. Her lips tingled with the kiss that almost happened. And her heart? It ached with the cruelest truth, that she still wanted him, even after everything. She whispered into the silence, her voice fragile. Why can't I stop loving you? Love is not a shortcut through apologies or desire. It demands proof. Proof in actions, in presence, in humility. Passion may spark, but only trust can sustain. The hospital was hushed in the deep hours of the night. The overhead lights dimmed, leaving only a soft glow along the hallways. Nurses whispered at their stations, and the low hum of machines filled the silence with a steady, almost tender rhythm. Jasmine walked the halls slower than usual, fatigue weighing heavily in her steps. She had been on her feet for 16 hours, her body begging for rest, but her heart too restless to listen. When she reached Ali's room, she peeked inside. The little girl slept peacefully, her rabbit tucked under her chin. Jermaine slouched in the chair beside her bed, his head tilted back against the wall, his tie undone, his chest rising and falling, in the shallow rhythm of someone pretending to nap but staying half alert. Jasmine's chest tightened. She hated how the sight of him, disheveled, worn, vulnerable, still stirred something in her. Quickly she looked away, convincing herself she was only here to check the monitors. After confirming Ali was stable, Jasmine drifted down the hall and into the small waiting alcove outside the pediatric wing. It was barely more than a nook, a bench, a vending machine, and a window overlooking the dark city. She sank onto the bench, her files slipping from her hand. The weight of exhaustion hit her hard. She leaned back, her body surrendering to the pull of sleep. For a while, she resisted. Doctors never truly slept on shift. They catnapped, waiting for the next call. But tonight, her eyes finally closed. Her breathing steadied. Her hand, still holding a pen, slipped against her lap. She looked so different like this, unguarded, fragile, at peace. That was how Germain found her. He had gone looking for water, restless from hours of watching over Ali. When he saw Jasmine curled on the bench, his chest ached with something he hadn't felt in years. She looked exactly as she had years ago, when she'd fall asleep on his couch after a long study session, her head against his shoulder, trusting him to keep the world away. He stood there for a moment, torn between leaving and staying, but the pull was too strong. Slowly, silently, he stepped closer. Her shoulders twitched with a shiver. Without thinking, he slipped off his jacket, expensive, tailored, the kind of fabric that had touched more boardrooms than tenderness, and draped it gently over her. The fabric brushed her cheek, and she stirred, her lashes fluttering. When her eyes opened, they found him hovering above her. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Jasmine sat up slowly, the jacket slipping across her shoulders. She grasped it with trembling fingers. The warmth of it, the scent of him embedded in the fabric, cologne, faint whiskey, something. Holy Germain, wrapped around her like a memory she never wanted to feel again. Her lips parted. Why? Why would you? Because you looked cold, he said softly, his voice rough, stripped of arrogance. And because once upon a time, I promised I'd never let you shiver alone. The words hit her like a blow. Memories rushed in, the nights he held her tight when she complained of drafty apartments, the way he used to drape blankets over her shoulders when she fell asleep at her desk. She blinked hard, forcing the tears back. You don't get to say things like that anymore, she whispered. His gaze burned, but it wasn't prideful, it was pleading. I don't know how to stop. I've loved you every day since you walked away. I just didn't know how to be worthy of it. She shook her head, clutching the jacket tighter. Don't make this harder. I've rebuilt myself, Germain. I can't go back. You don't have to go back, he said quickly. I don't want the past. I want now. I want the woman you've become, stronger, fiercer. Even if she hates me half the time, I'll take it. Her breath caught. She wanted to laugh, wanted to scream, wanted to cry. But instead, silence stretched between them, heavy and raw. Finally, she whispered, I'm terrified of you. His face faltered. Of me? I'm terrified of how much power you still have over me, she admitted. One look, one word, and suddenly the years of pain don't matter. That terrifies me more than losing you ever did. Germain's eyes shimmered, his throat tight. He lowered himself to sit beside her, careful to keep just enough space between them. Do you know what terrifies me? He asked. She turned, reluctant but curious. That you'll never forgive me. That you'll never let me try again. That I'll spend the rest of my life knowing the best thing that ever happened to me is walking this earth, and I'm just a stranger to her now. Jasmine's chest cracked open at his words. She hated him for making her feel, hated herself for wanting to believe him. The silence pulsed again. His hand twitched against his knee, inching closer. Hers rested on the bench, tense, ready to pull away. Their fingers brushed, barely a whisper of contact, but it was enough to ignite the spark, the same one that had never died. Her breath hitched. His eyes searched hers, full of hunger, sorrow, and hope. He leaned closer, not enough to touch, but enough to let her feel the heat of him. Jasmine, he whispered, her name breaking on his tongue like a prayer. She closed her eyes, her lips trembling. For 1 second, just one, she considered giving in. But then, with a soft gasp, she pulled her hand away, clutching the jacket tighter around her shoulders like armor. Her voice was shaky but firm. You can't keep doing this. You can't keep making me remember what it felt like to be yours. I'm not your safe place anymore. His face crumpled, but he nodded. He didn't argue, didn't push. Instead, he whispered, then let me try to earn my way back to being one. Jasmine stood, her knees unsteady. She slipped the jacket off and held it out to him. Keep this, she said. I don't want your warmth unless I can trust it again. She walked away, leaving him staring at the jacket in his hands, his heart torn open wider than it had ever been. Germaine sat on the bench long after she was gone. For the first time, he realized words and promises weren't enough. If he wanted her, truly wanted her, he'd have to change, not with speeches or touches, but with choices. Quiet, steady choices. And for the first time in years, Germaine Carter knew what humility felt like. Ali stirred in her sleep, coughing softly. The rabbit tumbled from her tiny arms onto the sheets. Jasmine, who had been reviewing notes at the far corner of the room, immediately rose. Her steps were quiet, practiced, carrying a doctor's precision but a woman's tenderness. She picked up the toy, tucked it gently under Ali's chin, and smoothed the child's curls. Germaine watched from the chair. He hadn't spoken in a while, too afraid of breaking the fragile peace Jasmine allowed in his presence. His eyes lingered not on Ali this time, but on Jasmine, the way her lips curved, into a faint smile as she whispered something soft to soothe the child. For the first time in years, he saw her not as the woman he lost, but as the woman she had become. Stronger, unreachable, yet still capable of giving more love than he ever deserved. The hours crept past midnight. Jasmine didn't leave. She sat by Ali's bed, flipping through her notes but staying close, her hand brushing Ali's forehead every so often. Germaine sat opposite her, silent, his elbows on his knees. For a while, the room was filled with nothing but the rhythmic beep of the monitor and the quiet breaths of a child dreaming. Finally, Germaine broke the silence. "You always did this," he said softly. Jasmine looked up, her brow furrowed. "Did what?" "Stayed. Even when no one noticed. Even when no one asked you to. You stayed for me, Jasmine. And now you're staying for her." His voice cracked. "I don't know how you still have that kind of heart after everything." Her gaze lingered on him for a long moment. The words should have hardened her, but they softened something instead. "Don't mistake forgiveness for compassion," she whispered. "I'm not," he said quickly. His eyes glistened. "I'm just grateful you're here." "That's you." Jasmine leaned back, sighing. Her pen slipped from her tired fingers, clattering onto the floor. Both of them bent at the same time to pick it up. Their hands met first. Her fingers brushed against his knuckles, warm and firm, sending a jolt up her arm. She froze, her breath catching. His hand didn't move either, caught, trembling, holding the weight of a moment neither of them had asked for. Their eyes met over the edge of Ali's bed. It wasn't like the jacket scene, heavy with words and confessions. This was quieter, simpler. A touch that spoke of what once was, what might still be, what should have never been broken. For 1 second, Jasmine didn't pull away. Her heart betrayed her. She remembered how his hands used to feel, steady on her waist, gentle when he touched her cheek, fierce when he promised she was his only forever. She remembered every trace of intimacy that still lived in her skin. Her lips parted. Her chest rose sharply. The temptation was overwhelming. Germaine's gaze dipped briefly to her mouth, then back to her eyes, searching for permission he didn't dare assume. His fingers shifted, curling slightly against hers, like a man begging silently for a chance to hold what he had lost. The room swelled with heat that had nothing to do with fever, and then Jasmine's body stiffened. She pulled her hand back quickly, clutching it to her chest as if burned. "No," she whispered, almost to herself. Germaine's heart clenched. He leaned back, giving her space, his jaw tightening to hold in everything he wanted to say. Jasmine's eyes glistened as she turned away. "Don't make me weak, Germaine. Don't take advantage of the part of me that still remembers what it felt like to love you." His voice was low, rough. "I'd never take advantage of you. I miss you. Missing me doesn't change the past." Her tone broke at the edges. "And it doesn't guarantee a future." They sat in silence again, both trembling from a storm neither dared release. Jasmine busied herself with Ali's chart, her hands unsteady. Germaine sat back, burying his face in his palms, swallowing down the ache. The moment had been fleeting, fragile, forbidden, yet it lingered in both of them, buzzing under their skin. Ali stirred again, murmuring something in her sleep. Jasmine reached to soothe her. Jermaine watched, his chest aching with the realization that this, her tenderness, her presence, was the one thing he had always wanted, and the one thing he could no longer demand. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't even a confession. It was just the brush of hands. But it was enough to remind them both that no matter how deep the scars, no matter how far they drifted, the fire was still alive, and that was both the hope and the danger of it. The hospital hummed with low energy in the small hours. Nurses whispered at their desks, machines blinked steadily, and the city outside lay wrapped in silence. Inside Ali's room, Jermaine hadn't moved from her bedside. His expensive watch ticked into the void, but time didn't matter anymore. He looked at his daughter's little hand in his. She was stable, breathing evenly, the flush of fever retreating. Relief loosened his chest, but the weight of Jasmine's presence pressed down harder. She was still here, always near, always steady, always more than he deserved. He had lived years without her, numb years, hollow years. But seeing her again was like learning how to breathe after drowning. He couldn't stop watching her, couldn't stop aching for the parts of her he once took for granted. It happened late one night. Jasmine had been reviewing charts in the lounge again, exhaustion painting shadows under her eyes. She leaned back against the bench, her eyelids fluttering closed. Jermaine watched from the doorway, torn. He shouldn't intrude. She had made it clear. Boundaries, professionalism, distance. But when her head lolled to the side, her body trembling slightly from the chill, something inside him refused to leave her like that. Quietly, reverently, he approached. This time, not with the arrogance of a man who believed he owned her, but with the humility of one who knew he didn't deserve even this small gesture. He draped his jacket over her shoulders once more, tucking it gently around her arms. His fingers brushed her sleeve, feather light, careful not to wake her. For a moment, he simply stood there, drinking in the sight of her, strong and fragile all at once. The woman he had failed, the woman he still loved. Her eyes fluttered open. She blinked, disoriented, then looked up at him. Their gazes locked. Neither spoke. The silence was charged, intimate, unbearable. Jasmine clutched the jacket around her shoulders, her voice a whisper. "Why are you doing this?" Jermaine's answer was raw, stripped bare. "Because I should have never stopped." The next morning, Jasmine expected to see Jermaine leaving for some meeting or taking calls in the hallway. But when she arrived, he was still in the chair beside Ali's bed, hair disheveled, tie missing, reading a brightly colored storybook. His voice was low, uneven, but warm. He was trying. And the little girl climbed all the way to the moon, and she wasn't afraid because she knew her dad was with her. Ali giggled in her sleep, murmuring, "Again." Jermaine smiled softly, brushing her hair back. "Again, sweetheart." Jasmine froze at the doorway, her heart lurching. She had never seen him like this, unguarded, tender, not for show, but for the love of a child. It was the kind of love she once begged him to embrace. Now, without her asking, he was learning, and it scared her more than his absence ever had. Later, as Ali rested, Jasmine found Jermaine in the hospital courtyard, sitting with his hands clasped, staring at nothing. "You stayed all night," she said quietly. He looked up, tired eyes meeting hers. "Where else would I be?" She wanted to argue, wanted to remind him of all the times he had chosen. Boardrooms over birthdays, deals over dinners, pride over people, but the words died on her lips. Because here he was, present, unmoving. "You don't have to prove anything," she whispered. "Yes, I do," he replied quickly. His jaw tightened, his voice breaking. "Not to you, not even to Ali, to myself. I've been hiding behind excuses my whole life, and for once I want to show up." Her chest tightened. She hated how much she wanted to believe him. That evening, Jasmine dozed in a chair by Ali's bed. Jermaine had insisted she rest, but she stubbornly stayed. When her head finally dropped against the chair's back, Jermaine reached for a spare hospital blanket and gently draped it over her shoulders. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open. For the second time in as many nights, their gazes met in that charged silence. This time, she didn't pull away immediately. His eyes softened, full of regret and longing. "I never deserved you." Her throat tightened. "Then why does it still feel like I can't breathe without you?" The confession slipped out before she could stop it. Her eyes widened, fear flickering across her face. But Jermaine didn't gloat. He didn't smirk. He simply looked at her with the weight of a man who had been given a fragile gift. "I'll spend the rest of my life proving you can," he whispered. That night, Jasmine sat awake long after Jermaine had fallen asleep in the chair, his hand resting protectively near Ali's. She studied him in the dim light, the lines of stress on his face, the sincerity in his exhaustion. For the first time, she realized that maybe, just maybe, he was finally learning that love wasn't about pride or appearances. It was about staying, about showing up when it mattered most. And though her heart still bore scars, a spark of hope began to flicker where bitterness once lived. Jasmine whispered into the dark, words he couldn't hear but words she needed to say. "If you're truly different, Jermaine, prove it, not with promises, with presence." And for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future, not a return to the past, but the possibility of something new. Jasmine sat alone in the staff lounge, the weight of exhaustion pulling at her. The smell of stale coffee clung to the room, but her thoughts were too loud to notice. She pressed her palms against her face, whispering to herself, "Don't fall again. Don't you dare fall again," because her heart was betraying her. The way Jermaine stayed by Ali's bedside, the way he whispered to his daughter with a tenderness Jasmine had once begged him to embrace, the way his eyes followed her, not with entitlement, but with humility. She hated that part of her, wanted to believe him. That night, she called Betty. Her friend's voice came sharp and fierce through the phone. "Don't you dare let him back in without proof, Jasmine. Men like that, they know how to make you feel again, just enough to forget the pain. But you remember, don't you? You remember the nights he made you cry, the morning he left you without an explanation." "I remember everything," Jasmine whispered. "Then protect yourself. He may be changing, but love doesn't erase history. Don't gamble your heart until you're sure he's worthy of it." Jasmine closed her eyes, tears pricking. What if he is worthy now? Betty sighed, softer this time. "Then make him prove it with actions, not words. Don't let nostalgia be your weakness." Meanwhile, Jermaine sat across from Levi in the cigar lounge. His friend leaned back in his chair, smoke curling in the dim light. "So, you've got her back in your life," Levi said. "The woman you wrecked, the woman who actually mattered." Jermaine stiffened. "I don't have her back. Not yet," Levi smirked. "Good, because you don't deserve her. Not unless you do something drastic. Jasmine isn't the type to fall for apologies. You want her? You're going to have to bleed for it." Jermaine frowned. "I'd risk anything for her." "Then risk what built your pride in the first place," Levi said coolly. "Your reputation, your empire, something that shows her you finally understand she's not another deal to close." Jermaine leaned back, silent, the words striking deeper than he wanted to admit. The opportunity came sooner than he expected. A week later, Jermaine was set to attend a high-profile investors' dinner. The event would secure a deal worth millions, money his company needed, especially with rivals circling. His board had insisted he attend. But that afternoon, Ali had a setback. The fever spiked. Jasmine stayed by her side, adjusting her care plan, soothing her as she cried. Jermaine got the call from his assistant, urging him to leave immediately for the dinner. He looked at Ali's trembling form, Jasmine's tired face, the fear in her eyes. And for the first time, the choice wasn't hard. He hung up the phone. "I'm not going," he said. Jasmine looked up, startled. "Jermaine, that deal—" "Doesn't matter," he interrupted, his voice firm. "Nothing matters more than being here. With her. With you." That night, word spread quickly. Jermaine Carter, the ruthless businessman, had walked away from a deal to sit in a hospital room with his daughter. Investors were furious. The press called it a mistake. His board demanded answers. But for the first time, Jermaine didn't care. Later that night, Jasmine cornered him in the hallway. Her voice was tight, trembling with something between anger and awe. "Do you know what you've just done? That deal was everything." Jermaine shrugged, but his eyes were steady. "She is everything. You are everything. I won't miss another moment. I won't sacrifice family for pride again." Her breath caught, anger collapsing into something far more dangerous, longing. "Why now, Jermaine? Why couldn't you be this man when I needed you?" "Because I was a fool," he said simply. "But I'd rather spend the rest of my life proving I've changed than let pride steal my second chance." Tears spilled down her cheeks. She shook her head, torn between fury and forgiveness. "You broke me once. If you do it again—" "I won't," he whispered, stepping closer. His hand hovered near her face, trembling. "I swear I won't." She wanted to step back. She wanted to tell him no. But when she looked into his eyes, for the first time, she saw something different. Not arrogance, not excuses, just truth. Love isn't proven by words or gifts. It's proven by sacrifice, by choosing presence over pride, people over power, humility over ego. Jermaine had finally learned, but Jasmine had to decide if she was ready to trust. Jasmine turned away, wiping her tears, her heart pounding. She wasn't ready to give him her yes, not yet. But for the first time, she didn't slam the door shut. And for Jermaine, that sliver of hope was enough to keep fighting. The storm had quieted. Ali's fever finally broke, her strength slowly returning. She laughed again, asked for more stories, and colored drawings of moons and stars. Jasmine watched her with relief, but her heart remained heavy. Jermaine had stayed through every sleepless night, every whispered prayer. He had cancelled meetings, silenced his phone, and chosen presence again and again. And Jasmine couldn't ignore it anymore. This wasn't the man who once walked away. This was someone new. One evening, Jasmine found him outside on the hospital terrace, leaning on the railing. The city glittered below, but his eyes weren't on the lights. They were on the stars, searching. "Why are you out here?" she asked gently. He turned, surprised but not defensive. His smile was soft. "To remind myself how small I am." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "I built towers, companies, empires," he said. "I thought they made me powerful. But standing here, looking at the sky, I realize I'm just one man. And without love, without you, without ally, all of it means nothing." Her chest tightened. The man who once flaunted his pride now stood bare before her, stripped of everything but humility. The next morning, Ali was discharged. Jasmine walked her out, holding her tiny hand, with Jermaine beside them. The air was crisp, the sun warm, and for the first time in a long time, Jasmine felt a quiet peace. As they reached the parking lot, Jermaine stopped. His hand trembled as he reached into his pocket. Jasmine froze when she saw the velvet box. "No," she whispered. "Not like before." He shook his head quickly. "Not like before." He knelt, not on polished marble or in a crowded gala, but in the hospital. Lot, the place where they had fought, healed, and found their way back. His voice shook. "Jasmine Collins, I don't deserve a second chance. I don't deserve you. But if there's even a sliver of hope left in your heart, I want to. Spend my life proving that pride will never come before love again. I don't have grand speeches. I don't have promises I can't keep. I only have this: I love you. I always have, and I'm ready to choose you every single day. Not in secret, not in pride, out loud, forever." Her vision blurred with tears. She remembered the pain, the sleepless nights, the betrayal. But she also remembered the laughter, the kisses, the dreams they once shared. And now, the man kneeling before her wasn't the arrogant millionaire who left. He was a father, humbled, broken, changed. Ali tugged Jasmine's hand, her little voice cutting through the silence. "Say yes, pretty doctor. Please." Jasmine laughed through her tears, pressing her hand to her mouth. She looked at Jermaine, at the man who had once crushed her and was now begging to rebuild. Slowly, she nodded. "Yes." Jermaine's breath broke. Relief and love flooded his face as he slipped the ring onto her finger, not as a trophy, not as a possession, but as a vow. For a heartbeat, they simply stared at each other, trembling with the weight of it. Then Germaine rose, cupped her face with shaking hands, and kissed her. It wasn't the desperate passion of their youth. It wasn't the arrogant claim of a man who thought she was his prize. It was slow, reverent, healing. And when Jasmine kissed him back, the years of pain melted into a promise. This time, they would get it right. As they walked away together, Jasmine holding Ali's hand, Germaine's arm around her shoulders. Jasmine finally let herself believe in something she had once sworn she'd never risk again. Forever. Love has the power to break us, but it also has the power to rebuild us, if we dare to let it. If this story touched your heart, don't leave just yet. Hit that like button to show your support. Subscribe to Mr. Leonardo's stories so you never miss another tale of love, pain, and redemption. And share this video with someone who believes in second chances. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive someone who once shattered you if they proved they had truly changed? I can't wait to read your thoughts.